so then I was kind of on a roll. So a lot of 60s stuff, and I keep coming back to 60s stuff all the time as some kind of ideal that for what we are doing, you know, unless we really flirt with it, that we do on some songs that where when you realize that the kind of tremolo riffing of death and black metal and surf rock, that the wall between them is paper thin in a way. We have played around with that a couple of times, but otherwise it's not blatantly 60s inspired, but the whole ideals of, oh, musicians in a room playing music together and make it sound like that, and that whole thing comes a lot from 60s ideals for me. So that sticks around.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Matt here from Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast. I hope that you had a killer weekend. I most certainly did. This Vox&Hops episode is presented by Heavy Montreal. Heavy Montreal are Montreal's premier metal promoter, and if you are ever in Montreal, trust me when I say this, if you are looking for a killer show to go to, Heavy Montreal will have you covered. I am beyond stoked to have Heavy Montreal behind the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I'd just like to ask you to follow the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast on the podcast platform of your choice. But more than that, I would love for you to tell a friend about the podcast. If there's someone in your life that just loves extreme music and loves craft beer, well, you should definitely let them know that the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast exists. You could tell them that there are over 400 episodes where I sit down with some of the world's best metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while enjoying craft beers. If you would encourage one of your metalhead beer-loving friends to become a brand new Vox&Hops head, that would be something that I would truly appreciate. Now, today in the podcast, I'm very stoked with Johannes Eckerström of Avatar. Get ready, everyone. This is Vox&Hops episode number 441.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today I'm very stoked to be with Johannes Eckerström of Avatar. Johannes, I'm very, very stoked to be with you. Give everyone a little bit of context. We are very early in January. I have not recorded an interview since on Zoom, like sitting in this location in my house since mid-November. It's a happy return. I tend to switch my brain off in the holidays and try to just be myself and not anything else. And I was like amping myself up to get back into this seat and back into this hat. And you're a perfect guest to hang out with because you also conduct interviews and you're a killer vocalist and you're a great guy. And all that to say, how you doing?
Again, but thank you. Yeah, I'm doing good. I am for the second time, I'm in this rehearsal space that sharing with some friends. We recently moved in here. Well, they did. I was on tour. And essentially I'm surrounded by cool amps and cool drums and stuff, but I'm really just using a table and a laptop and a microphone and just need a place where I don't bother people when I scream and shout. But it feels like I'm more of a musician because I'm surrounded by their gear.
It's all of their equipment that makes you feel more credible.
Yeah. And it's like the thing is, it's when Avatar puts up amps in a rehearsal room, which they like to do when we get around to it, but you know, on tour it's all these, I don't even remember what we use nowadays. I guess it's Kempers
or Quad Cortex is all the rage, right?
Yeah, I guess it's Kempers. I really should know. No, it's totally Kempers. And then it's a treat to put an amp up, but these guys have all the amps up, you know, so it's feels fancy.
Old school. It is very quiet on stage nowadays. Most people don't understand there, and you're like, okay, cool. You're so lucky you get to see all these shows side stage and you hear nothing.
Yeah, we really try to remember for festivals and stuff to put a monitor side stage if someone will show up. Standard.
It's just drums and us. That's all they hear.
Yeah.
Is that something I used to, being a vocalist, as you mentioned that you have a space now that you can go and scream and make noises without people noticing. Now I'm used to have that qualm, let's call it, that problem, that worry that I would bother my neighbors, and I just got over it and started doing it in my house. And before the tour, we hadn't toured in a long time before we went out in September, and I had to work and get my voice back into shape, which is something that singers have to do. If not, we forget. somehow how to be extreme vocalists.
Yeah.
And I was like leaving, and I crossed my neighbors. I live in a condo, and I was like, I hope you don't mind. Like, and they're like, oh no, we don't even hear you. So from then on, I'm don't even go to a jam space anymore. Just do it in my bedroom, run around the house with like in your monitors, and just have a good time.
Yeah, well, in my case, it's my wife works from home a lot
There
as
you go.
well. That's kind of how it started. It was really during, uh, yeah, once she started to work on her PhD, which
Mm.
happened to coincide with COVID happening and everything shutting down. So the rules changed for everyone. Uh, so suddenly we were both working more from home, and one of us needed to sit very quietly and read a lot of literature and type and think and be in meetings and conferences online, all the things you don't want to
In the
in the
background.
background of. So it's that is what started it. And then but then I think in the world of, you know, trying to be some kind of functioning adult, i I think I struggle nowadays more with the thing that is always something to do at home.
Oh yeah, there's always an excuse to not practice something.
Yeah, you know, and this is and I have more discipline than ever before in my life, probably. So it's not so much to, you know, find excuses in doing other things, because usually I grew up, I got, if I'm good or bad at music, that somebody else can be the judge of that. But whatever I am, I became that by doing this instead of what I was supposed to do. You know, this was my
So
distraction, you know.
for
So
years, the music was the distraction.
exactly. And now it's just that sense of responsibility in terms of, oh yeah, I wish I should vacuum. Oh yeah, I need to, yeah, oh there's, oh yeah, these IKEA boxes have been here for a while, haven't they? And so on and so on and so on. So to have a dedicated physical space that then becomes your, you know, the mental space,
Mm.
it helps.
It's true, and I'm actually wearing her shirt right now. A. Williams mentioned sort of the same thing, that once she set up a studio and started recording outside of her house is when she became more focused and concentrated on that mental space of creating and practicing and being in that mind frame.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe in that a lot.
Vox and Hops up and hang out with my metal friends, talking about their lives and music while sharing craft beers. What are you going to be drinking on your side today? And then I'll present what I'm going to be drinking.
Well, I haven't done alcohol in almost 5 years. I
Oh,
still drink beer, but I drink, and so I become quite an alcohol-free beer connoisseur, as you do, because it wasn't, taste wasn't the issue.
no,
So
exactly.
and still malt as a source of flavor and hops as a source of flavor in all shapes and forms still makes sense to me. So the hunt always goes on. Um, well, today it's even worse than that, though. I'm drinking water because I
Well,
am
it's
in
the
my
primary
space working.
ingredient that
Yeah.
goes into a non-alcoholic beer.
Yeah, so it's 1/4 of a beer here. We just mean the Vox hops and alcohol to really make it pop. But 25% of a beer right here.
Well, congrats on 5 years. That's a big accomplishment.
No, well, nah, it was easy most of
That's
the
good.
time.
It's not always easy. On my
No,
side, I'm drinking something special that I made last year. It's one of the last ones that
oh
came out.
nice.
This is
And
the
metal
Metal
injection.
Injection presents Vox and Hops Pit Culture, where I teamed up with 30 breweries, I think it was, across the globe to release beers about what happens in mosh pits. Being a frontman that tours around the globe, I always get asked that question: what's your favorite place to play? What is it like? And literally, whether it's in Japan, albeit in Japan they're a bit quieter, or in South America, or in Europe, or in Canada, mosh pits are all the same. So I
Mm.
wanted to showcase that with different names of the beers being different things that happen in a mosh pit. This one being called The Breakdown. They took some creative liberties. This is Lira Nidzutais, a brewery from here in Quebec, Canada, not Quebec the city. They're actually in Lévis, which is across the river from Quebec City. And it's a West Coast IPA, 6.2%. And it's probably the last one I'm going to drink on the Pit Culture series on the podcast, because that project is now wrapping up. Take me to, if you don't mind, opening up about the 5 years and what slowed you down? Because it wasn't the taste the problem you were mentioning.
No, I guess it was just time. I I I believe I have had more beer than most, and I gathered enough good stories. You know, those kind of that. And you're gonna laugh at this, so now we
Yes.
are.
Yes.
And it really started to kind of wane off anyway. I first stopped drinking on the road. I keep reading up about the people that would, you know, lose their minds while touring and then trying to be good boys and girls while at home. And for me, that never made sense. For me, it was the other way around. Like, but all my friends, or most of my friends, are at home. You know, am I gonna whiskey with dad or shots in a bar with a stranger? You know, like, so
Yeah.
I stopped while on the road first. And then my wife, like, I saw a YouTube clip of you. You're much better now. And I'm like, shit, it works.
You were better vocally or better as a
Yeah.
human.
Now better vocally. Yeah, human. Yeah. Well, in some ways, I'm sure. And then in some ways, you're an awesome, fun, adventurous. I haven't illegally gotten up on roofs as much in the last 5 years as I had in the past, you know? That's
Yeah.
also maybe also something to do with age, you know, what age you're in and what life you live, and not just what you consume, of course. But in
We
in
don't
in
bounce
that sense,
as well as we
yeah,
used to.
exactly. In that sense, I used to be a fantastic human being in terms of adventure. Now I just try to fill it with something else, and which works. It's good, and I enjoy it. But I started to wane it off, really. So it wasn't this. There was no rock bottom. I still had a home. You know,
Yeah.
took care of myself. It was just this evolution until where something that makes sense for me.
That's great. That's great. And it is true that alcohol and performing live is horrible together. Even if you're good the whole day, it's the consequences of the night before that can still
Mm.
have a huge impact on a performance.
Yeah, and just I don't know. I feel if you're completely, it feels like in order for it to work for me on the road with drinking, at least at the time, it seemed like the worst thing is to like do it once and then really feel how bad it feels afterwards and stuff. So
Yes.
you need to be in that little constant buzz if you're gonna indulge deeply. You have to stay in the deep, which is a terrible idea. But we were
Totally.
like, is this our first US tour? And it took us a while to get to the point of touring US, but now it's been a decade of good times. But the first time we really, it was a lot of fun, and it was a 42-day tour. Don't remember how many shows, but yeah, we were kind of out of it for 39 days out of 42.
That's a
It was,
question too,
but
though. It's like,
it was
and you,
awesome.
if you remember it all. But that's another thing that I always have, like with the podcast and with my beer identity in the world. It's always a discussion that I have before I leave for a tour: is why am I there? It's not for any of that. It's for the performance, and it's for the fans. It's for the people that are coming to the show, and they deserve the best version of us.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, it's also live, you know,
Mm,
that, yeah, sure, that's why you're there. That's the job, that's the gig, and that's hopefully your first love, you know, while doing it. But at the same time, you're also, if you're gonna spend a lot of time away from home, we need to find all these ways, I think, to make that, you know, our second home, and to not have a life being put on hold just because we're out there.
that's true.
Um, and that goes from balancing out what kind of lifestyle, what life we want to live, how we want to enjoy ourselves, not just how we want to perform, and also, you know, how we deal with home life while living, you know, going off to Neverland. So there's some kind of, I believe there's some kind of balance to be had with it as well, where absolutely it's all about the shows. And I mean, we spend a headline show with Avatar. Well, I have a 2 hour set. Then I do a bunch of stuff, which gives the other guys a break. So they play their lace and play 1 hour 45 probably. and and
Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
yeah, then yes, I am. As a frontsman, I am a victim.
Mhm.
No, but then there's a workout routine on that is for the sake of shows and for the shows the next day and the next week. Really,
Nice. This is like a
Yeah,
physical workout or just a vocal
yeah,
workout?
no, a physical workout, like
That's
heavy
awesome.
cardios and just we we have this one of our road cases just full of you know dumbbells and yoga
Nice.
mats and the little
That's
ab
sick.
wheel and one of those pull-up bars that you can fit in a door frame
Yeah.
or on a doorpost that it never fits. I just given up on that one. But also when you see local crew uh, carry that up some narrow stairs
Then you don't use it.
and like no well we use it but just I don't want them to know what's in there. Like, oh, this weighs a lot. What is in it? Weights.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel it
yeah,
feels
yeah.
I feel bad then. But it's probably up to 2 hours, 1 hour and a half is dedicated just to that for the sake of the show. It's
That's amazing. Good for
yeah.
you guys. We have in the past, my first Canadian tour back in 2008 with Cryptopsy, we
Mm.
had borrowed Anonymous's trailer, which is, I guess we rented it for them and or boarded, I don't remember. And we brought so many weights because Flo is still really into working out, but back then he was at like a pinnacle workout, like super into it. And we had packed the trailer wrong and had put all these weights not on the axle, which is where they need to go because it's where you put the heaviest stuff in the trailer that we should have known. And we literally
Yeah.
tore the trailer apart like a can
Oh
opener.
yeah.
Sorry, Anonymous.
I
So we
know
left
that
it
one.
in Thunder Bay, and
Eh,
it lives there now. But too many weights on tour that we
yeah,
didn't use
no.
very much. You guys seem to be a bit more into the system, into the ritual, the routine.
The trick is to schedule it. It was also, but it was a learning curve how to have it make sense. How, what can you do on the road? Because you can do
Mhm.
no matter unless you're Bono and have the top penthouse suite, and then have
At the
people
time,
build a
yeah,
gym in the connecting
yeah,
penthouse suite. If you don't get to do it like that, you will never have everything. And I know
correct.
for me, it was a challenge to find, like, I got into picking something heavy up and putting it back down 8 times in a row and all of that at home. And then you couldn't do it on the road. So then you switch to more uh, interval cardio training, blah, blah, or body weight and stuff. And then
Elastics,
kind of
all that
feeling,
stuff.
yeah. And then kind of feeling that you missed out on what you had planned while you were at home and bouncing back and forth. Now I feel there's a good balance and it starts to make sense. But yeah, you can surely bring too much. But I guess, oh yeah, that was what I was getting to. The trick is to I really plan it out beforehand. Really, I have, I guess now my current schedule is 8 days planned. You know, in a
That's
row
sick.
with what I'm
That's a
supposed to do.
busy ass day, but it keeps, idle hands. I can just imagine like my days are busy on tour. I can imagine what yours are. If you have that regiment on top of the sound check, on top of load in, on top of just meet and greets, VIPs, I imagine you're doing too.
We No, we don't actually. We might change our minds, but it's just one of those things where I always struggled to. I know we leave a lot of money on the table for it, and also that, more importantly, maybe that a lot of people want it and would genuinely like it. And I think we as people, we still kind of struggle with making sure that we feel they get their money's worth. Because
I agree
clearly,
with that.
if you clearly look what's out there in the world and what people get with these VIP packages and stuff, and how many are returning customers, if you will, to
That's
it,
super insightful.
then it's objectively true that people get something out of it. But for me to feel the same thing, like, oh, now I did X amount of dollars of gave X amount of dollars of joy back to this person who's paying for this. I mean, the concerts make sense. There you can give your all in a stuff. And also a
So
bit selfish. Speaking of how you spend your time in the day, I mean, at the very least, for a meet and greet of any sorts like that, that people pay for, it's fair to it's fair of them to expect that we should be dressed up.
Yeah,
But
totally.
I
Yeah.
already get ready now. 2 hours before the show, my pre-show routine gets
Yeah.
rolling, right? And if you want to do it before doors when you have a headline set, do I
That's
want to
like
walk
just
around like that
5
for
hours.
5 hours?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ugh.
And
No, yeah, no, I get it. Yeah.
then also because if I start the day with picking up those weights and trying to touch my toes and all of that, then you have those hours in between. For instance, now on this last tour, right before the tour, I rewatched the first Exorcist film, and when they talk and blah blah blah, going into Washington, he's driving out from Washington. Wait a minute, Google. Oh, it's 20 minutes from the venue. The house is 20.
Mhm.
Okay, so me and Tim, our guitar player, and John, our driver, the bus driver, went and checked out the location of the stairs in that house.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and if you always have a meet and greet, you might miss out on those opportunities. Or you do it after. So that means maybe we do it after the shows. But then if we have done the show right, like D. Snyder said at some point, I guess this whole thing about, I think he never really partied after shows. And his reasoning was, if I have anything left in me that can make it to the party, I've cheated the audience out of something. And
That's
I'm
great. Yeah.
in a similar mind space with it, where I'm sure we could, but like, hey, it's so nice to meet you. Like, can
I
never
agree
get
with
these lower
multiple
voices.
factors of what you said.
Yeah.
A lot of people are making a killing doing it, and I imagine like there's that return customer thing. As you said that, I bet bands, once you do a certain number on tour, it ends up becoming this baseline in our future tour planning mentalities, and I wonder how they can keep it up to that if it wasn't worthwhile, that meet and greet.
Yeah. Then we are always talking about this and reevaluating it
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. So who knows in the future? I was way more strict in these thoughts before.
Mm-hmm. What is really interesting, and if people listening don't know this, is that the VIPs are not organized by the promoters. They're organized by the bands themselves, which is why a lot of the times there's no ticket involved in the VIP, which is something that's crazy too.
Oh, I never thought about that. But yeah, that is a separate. Well, usually people tend to go to the show as well, I guess.
Exactly. It's like they upgrade themselves. Classic Vox and Hops question here is: I'd love to hear about the soundtrack of your youth when you're growing up, in your parents' or guardians' house. What music was playing when you were not in control of the radio? And I hear that your brother was a big part of your early musical landscape um,
Yeah, when it
for
comes to
metal
heavy
and
stuff,
stuff.
absolutely.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
so take me back even before that, like what your parents listened to, what your guardians listened to. What was playing when you were not in control of the radio?
a lot of classical music, first and foremost, I would say, from both of my parents. And then my dad is born in 1949, and he, perfect age for the Beatles.
Oh yeah.
And and it led to me, I kind of did take control of the stereo early on, because both with the classical music, because I was into music early on, and I got piano lessons when I was 4 or 5. I do
Mm-hmm.
not play like one of those people. Oh, he started when he was 4. No, but I started piano lessons when I was 4 and until I was 9. So
It's good. It's the musical knowledge of the piano. You don't have to be a
yeah,
virtuoso, but understanding the landscape of where notes are is an
yeah,
excellent framework. And a lot of parents and young people with children always we push people start with piano because all the notes make sense.
yeah. It's so useful it keeps coming up all the time. And now I play a little bit in our shows and stuff. But I mean, my playing level is roughly around an average 10-year-old if they started at 4.
If they just keep going.
Um, yeah. So,
You make it look good
oh,
though. That's
yeah, that's it. And that's all that really matters. Fuck it, we can track it.
I
But
was
we
gonna say
don't.
it, but you did.
We don't. I'd rather play and sing poorly and have it be actually in the moment
Hell
than
yes.
tracking. Let's see what we think when we're in our 70s if we keep going. But as for now, I'd rather, yeah. No, but as I always, whatever music was being played, I kind of got into. So I would, pretend that I was a conductor when I was, 4 or 5 years old. And at some point, there was something about Beatles on TV. The way I remember it, I was probably 8 years old. and I was impressed. And Dad saw that and put on some of his vinyls, and around the time then starting to update his collection with CDs. And every time he came home with a new one, hey, look, I got another Beatles, and it kind of became my album, my CDs.
It's an
Um,
awesome framework there
yeah.
too. I got into the Beatles
So,
way too late in my life. I don't know why. Yeah.
well, how old are your parents? Because you're clearly too young to be there at the time.
60, 70 at this point. So yeah.
Okay, so they could have been, well,
Yeah.
they're just a tiny bit too young, maybe,
Maybe, yeah. My
to
dad was
really
more into
to,
the heavier rock than them.
yeah. So if he's 17 now, so he's born in 50 something.
Hmm.
So his teenage years it was more psychedelic and hard rock and whatever.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Iron Butterfly.
Yeah, there you go. Uh, no, so then I was kind of on a roll. So a lot of 60s stuff, and I keep coming back to 60s stuff all the time as some kind of ideal that for what we are doing, unless we really flirt with it, that we do on some songs that where when you realize that the kind of tremolo riffing of death and black metal and surf rock,
Yeah,
that the wall between them is paper thin in a
yeah,
way. We have played around with that a couple of times, but otherwise it's not blatantly 60s inspired, but the whole ideals of, oh, musicians in a room playing music together and make it sound like that, and that whole thing uh, comes a lot from 60s ideals for me. So that sticks around. As far as the heavy stuff goes, yeah, like a friend, same age as I, but slightly younger parents. He was kind of spoon fed Black Sabbath and Kiss and whatnot. And so I got a lot there. So so part of me started my journey into heavy music chronologically as if I was there at the time. It went very natural from Sabbath, Purple to the thrash to the black to the death. Kind of the timeline in my life that those 9 8 9 months where I did the trip kind of was fast forwarding the actual history of metal, I think. Um, and then from my brother's room, mainly, yeah, like power metal, Blind Guardian
hmm
and Halloween in
All the
particular.
German greats then.
Yeah, all the German greats, and way more bands at the time, but those two still stay with me the most. And I would say the same for him. And then, that led to Dimi Borgir and whatnot. And then you make some friends in, I don't know, equivalent of junior high, I guess. I don't know the Canadian system, but
Hmm.
in högstadiet, we then you had, there was a black metal friend and a death metal friend, and I got to borrow a stack of 10 CDs of each guy,
So,
same week probably,
so
and
different back then. Yeah.
yeah, and it was a good crash course. And as for death metal, was that guy's favorite albums at the time. So, None So Vile was there. Um, um, Carcass was there. I don't remember which. A couple of their albums. Uh, yeah, a couple of them. Necroticism, which I now I started on. Heartwork, and I think because he knew I kind of first time he met me I had a Megadeth shirt on, so I don't think I think he thought Swan Song was okay, but he knew I would like it even more. So that was there. Immolations, Close Our World Below, Failure for Gods, The Impale, Dead Shall Dead Remain. See, I still remember. I can probably, if I think it's okay, Gorguts Obscura,
Nice.
and I said Non Survival, and okay, there are a couple more that I don't remember. And with the black metal stack, it was, Dark Throne and Dissection and, you know, your
So
usual suspects of the mostly that second
fantastic
wave Scandinavian.
early introduction. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, as it was a Bathory album, but the rest was the, mid 90s stuff. So, and then I was kind of off to the races and had this weird potpourri of still loved Germans with mullets killing dragons and all of that.
The
Still,
Beatles,
yeah,
Black
still highly
Sabbath.
idealized. And yeah, exactly. And so all of that kind of going on at once. At the same time, I got piano lessons between age 4 or 5 until I'm 9,
Then you fell into the
together with
trombone.
my siblings. Yeah, exactly. Well, the piano teacher, because she came home and kids from the neighborhood, it was, a bunch of parents organized it kind of privately when we were little. Then in Sweden, when you are starting third grade, you get heavily subsidized music lessons if
Yeah,
you want, where you even get to borrow an instrument for free the first year, and then it's not expensive to buy it the year after either.
that's
And
fantastic.
in this socialist hellhole of a welfare state where kids get to explore art for almost no cost,
And
you know,
jam rooms. I've spoken to a bunch of Swedes there, so I know that you guys have like
yeah,
jam rooms that you guys can go and use, and there's gear there too. Just unbelievable.
yeah, like it never felt far away
Hmm.
to get to do this. And in that, when we got to go one evening and try all those different instruments, more traditional, yeah, I could make. I was 9 years old and I made a trombone. It sounded like a car,
Yeah.
that. Okay, that's cool. I'm in. So, and that I kind of kept that going parallel with picking up the guitar and learning power chords and getting an electric guitar and that whole journey of my own. The trombone kept happening until I graduated high school with lessons, and I was in that music school's big band, playing in the mood and satin doll and those kind of things a bit. So this whole so music, I was there was because it was so early for me. There was no big music is my life thing because it was more like, oh, now when I look at it, I guess it's kind of my life, I guess.
There's always
Same
that
with make
distraction that kept you away from doing the other
Yeah,
jobs, but
exactly. And at the same time, it was also homework. It was kind of everything. And some kind of
unbelievable.
music filled up every space. It was also like a friend who had a good computer early on had this MIDI sequencing program. I guess we'll call MIDI session. I don't remember who did it, but you wrote in actual notes. It was like sheet music, which I could read already when we became friends, 8 years old. I could read music because of the piano and stuff. So we, as playtime, in between, I don't know, making drawings of pirates throwing rocks at each other or playing with the GI Joes, another game we would play was to compose.
That's
You
awesome.
know, so I mean, all this tells me that I should be better at it by now, or at least or be paid more or something. But
Ever
it was
so
always,
humble. I like it.
but it was in some shape or another. It was always around and was always from very early on both recreational and something explored at my own time, and then something mom would remind you, did you practice today? And like, shut up. Okay, so it was everywhere.
I think that's awesome. And Sweden's got, everywhere's got its ups and downs and positives and faults, but supporting young children with music is something that every country should do. And I say that every time I
Mm.
talk to a Swede. So I
Yeah,
truly believe in that.
music and sports
Yes.
is not a huge class issue in Sweden. Of
Hmm.
course, I guess it's more affordable to play football. I
Yes.
mean, I'm European football
Yes. Yes.
uh,
I make the
than
same decision with my children.
ice
Yes.
hockey or horseback
Exactly.
riding and
Yes.
everything. But something was always there.
The opportunity for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good. I didn't partake in the sports part so much though.
My son is really into sports and I don't know where he got it from. It's not from me. Talk to me about discovering your voice. I saw an interview that you fell into becoming the vocalist of the band because all the other positions were filled.
Yeah.
You were intimidated by writing lyrics, but then all along you sort of felt like this is what you wanted to do anyways. Something that I thought about as you doing the trombone, and I was talking to Ollie from Archspire, and he wasn't playing the trombone, but he was playing the trumpet or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
can't quite remember, but voice control and airflow control and how that benefited you becoming a vocalist afterwards is what I'm interested in.
Yeah, I came to realize because I have on our album Hail the Apocalypse, there's a song Puppet Show where I do play a trombone solo.
Of course, that's
And
awesome.
I mean, now I play like someone who quit right after high school, but it's still enough to do once, and it's fun. And we play it live on occasion, which means the trombone comes out on the road. And I did discover if if and when I take the time to sit and you know pl- play a bit on that thing nowadays, singing is so much easier afterwards. It's just the best warm up in the world, because it's one of those things, right? To control your airflow,
Mm-hmm.
it's the be all end all of any kind of singing at the end of the day.
Totally.
There are
Yeah.
those things a singer can do, like you can have a candle burning, just a couple of inches away from your mouth, and if the sing well, and if the flame doesn't move, you're in control. And one of the things we do is this S sound is pushing the diaphragm, and then when the lungs are completely empty, we relax and let the air come in automatically without us sucking it in. All these exercises, and I mean, playing the trombone is,
Yeah.
you know,
Restricting the airflow right away.
exactly,
Yeah.
and controlling it and creating already there notes, like it's because it's not of course you got your positions where the things are, but you still have to play the right note with your lips as well to make it sound good. It doesn't
Oh, interesting.
happen automatically in this.
I've never played the trombone. That's interesting. Okay.
To somebody, so there's this, how do you say it in English? Well, they work together, the
There's a
instrument and the lips
synergy.
to
A
create.
synergy was the word.
Yes, very good, thank you. So absolutely, that helps a lot. And then I think one thing that I think, good or bad, I am a loud singer.
Okay.
And I think probably that has something to do that I got into so much of because this, trombone is an acoustic instrument you play in a concert hall of some sort, and it's the room. The microphone is not part of the instrument, even if you're recording. Not in the way that where any kind of rock, metal, pop vocals are,
They
genres that
record the
evolve
sound in
alongside
the
recording
room.
techniques.
They record the
Yeah.
sound of the instrument in the room.
And with this also, most of my learning, the start of learning to sing, this music school, while playing the trombone, I also at some point pick it up and start to take a little bit of piano lessons again. And, there were some other, got to do a bunch of things through the years. I was there, grew up probably taking lessons and whatnot for 9 or 10 years there. And another thing, I joined, I was in the choir, and that also is something that you don't do close to a microphone and all
No,
this.
you got
I
to belt
explore,
it.
my first getting to know my voice is, singing the bass part of Hallelujah. Pause.
Wait for someone else to sing. And
Yeah, no.
3, 2, 1.
Hallelujah. No, so I think so. My fundamentals before I then, okay, so I love all this heavy music, and I was the first kid on the street that could say, oh, that hurts, but a sound came out. Okay, I passed the audition. um,
He's the one that could still sort of talk after.
Yeah, so exactly. And where was I going with this?
Belting, being a loud singer.
Yeah, no, so all this exploring, I kind of did it backwards, as far as then what kind of stuff we are doing, where I went from first and foremost playing other instruments to then being really loud and brutal and stuff, but being, and then now I'm in the middle of trying to get better at singing in my natural lower range gently, so, and usually I guess people like to sing la 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 la. Okay, that was cool. And now how do I do? But I was doing that for growing up, and then wait a minute, la la la. Oh shit.
This feels good. This is
Yeah,
natural.
but also, but I feel like I'm better at keeping my pitch when I'm forceful, for instance, when I'm pushing the rage, belting it out, pretend that I'm Rob Halford.
Yeah.
I believe myself to stay in pitch better than when you try to be, I don't know, Paul Simon.
I don't know if it's something to do with like the airflow pushing.
That's certainly part of it.
And hitting, and it just sits in that spot better
Yeah.
than when you are singing lower the air. There's a way. Obviously, there's a way to do it there, but like the airflow is less, so you waver maybe in and out of the pitch more so than if you were just attacking the note.
I guess it's simply, yeah, it's just more room for error, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then also more, I mean, nowadays, I sure definitely better at, exploring the finer nuances of the wild stuff, of course, and but there's still millimeter by millimeter in the gentler things, how much, how nasal, not nasal, how deep, how
Yeah,
wide that tone can
exactly.
be, and all that, where it feel like you turn to a different person between the takes. And it's like an identity crisis. Like now, as I'm sitting here, I'm writing songs, and it's one of the things I worked on today is definitely gentler.
Mm,
And then I kind of, between the takes, as I'm doing lyrics and melody, and I'm just, it's so early in whatever the next album will be. This is, it's a sandbox right now, so
totally.
every take is so completely different. And there's a lot of listening back now, like, who's that guy?
Yeah. Is that interesting that you could play with hypothetically with like lyrical concepts that you can hypothetically be different people? Is that something that you'd be open to?
Sure, it happens on occasion. And I mean, of course, we too had to write at least one serial killer song on our first album, because we grew up listening to Cryptopsy and The Haunted
Oh,
and
yes.
whatnot.
I do
So
love The
we
Haunted.
had,
I want to bring that up by them.
oh yeah, they
I've
are,
always loved them too.
yeah, they are probably collectively for the band. I mean, if I boil it down to what keeps coming up every time I write a song, I will think about Black Sabbath at least once. I will think about the Beatles at least once. Um, and they set the fundamental, no matter what it sounds like, they set the fundamental ideals for me. Um, if you do, oh, there's a guitar in this band, so we should have some cool riffs first,
Sabbath.
and then yeah, and once you have that, you're kind of free to explore what this song can become,
Mhm.
what makes sense. And also with Black Sabbath comes the importance of the rhythm section and the full-fledged composition of it, but it's all in worship of the riff, and that
Yeah,
drives the song. And that's heavy metal, pure and simple. And then every, whatever branch of that we feel that we are in with our respective bands, and you never get around that, or at least I don't want to. Those are my core ideals. And with the Beatles, it's that, I don't know, in service of the song, I guess. And also when you look at Beatles history, for the brief time compared to how long bands
many
exist
versions.
and
Yeah.
operate nowadays, they learned a new trick and couldn't wait to try to make a song with it. Oh, this picking technique, oh, that's Dear Prudence, because someone showed something in India and then John wanted to write a song with it. And oh, we have 8 channels now. Oh, we can tape loop now. Or oh, like, or
Yeah.
and what is, oh, it's sitar. Yeah, George wanna do, okay, Norwegian wood. Like, it was always this, learn something new every time and have that be a driving force of inspiration in and out of itself. Uh, so this is a long roundabout to say, but collectively for the band, when it comes to play heavy music and stuff, we did cover both Phobophile and Slit Your Guts, actually. But what we spent the most time doing, I think, individually, was trying to figure out what The Haunted did. Because I guess we really liked, it's that type of riffing that they did, that then you find, of course, was rooted at the gates. Now we were
100%. Yeah.
young enough to miss that train, and then, oh,
Same.
I love The Haunted. Oh, what band were they in? Oh, cool. Oh, cool.
Same. I did exactly the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, but The Haunted was the first time I think we encountered for real that kind of extreme metal riffing that is that melodic, the root notes and lead melody on one guitar, dun 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 dun
Yeah.
dun, and working like that, which makes it very playful, and so you get so much out of one instrument. And of course, now we took 1,000 steps away from that a lot of the time, just because we looking for our own thing. But that fundamental playing and a lot of downstrokes, and that it actually is muscle work to play your
Oh, yeah.
instrument. And and that went for all of us. Marco Oro was one of those, how does he do it? Can I do like this? And then Peter Dolvin came back, and those transitions from the clean to the heavy and everything. So both those guys and the way their shows were, and John as a drummer, as a teen, there was that period of his life where he didn't go outside that whole summer because he practiced drums. I think for a few weeks there, at least it was 16 hours in a day, that obsessed
Wow.
teenager.
Good. That's where it comes from.
Yeah.
There's no secret, people. You got to put the work in.
No, exactly. And one of the things he would do was play through live rounds in Tokyo over and
that.
over again.
Yeah.
So it really became part of the band's DNA, The Haunted.
Love them. And Peter Dolvin, I got a weak spot for him still.
Oh, yeah.
Very, 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 very much so. Something cool that happened between you and I is that I released a new album this past year in 2023, and I did a bunch of interviews. And you know how this is. You get stacked of interviews that come from a publicist, and there's these time frames, and you sit down, and sometimes you do 2, 3, 4 in a row. And one morning, I'm sitting here, not here, but here, and I'm sitting there with you, and your face said something to me, and I Googled your name as we were talking, and I was like, holy shit, I know who you are. So talk to me about that, the MetalBreak being a part of a podcast. Why did you jump into a podcast? What is it about podcasting for you that got you into it? Let's start with that.
Well, it's definitely something that I don't know when it started, but it's definitely, podcast is definitely something I enjoy recreationally. So that's first. My wife is a music journalist. She has a lot of hats, but one hat she wore for a very, very long time was, she was writing for, she's Italian, so her main stuff was in this magazine called Metal Maniac. And then for a while, also she was in Italian Metal Hammer and a bunch of other publications. But those were the big two printed one that she spent a lot of time in, especially Metal Maniac. That was huge at the time she was there. So she has that background, and I have my background in this. And then we both were kind of full of ourselves enough to when we would sit and talk metal, that we think that thing that everybody else starting podcasts is, wow, this is a good conversation. You know what? The world needs to hear this. And then it's something we've been, playtime between me and my wife, really. And it's it's a side gig for both of us, something we really do for fun.
Because podcasting is not what everyone thinks it is. But
no, but it's just also because, again, she is a doctoral student at this point, we starting to see the finish line of her finalizing her PhD, getting those well-deserved 3 letters.
Oh, yes.
And I keep releasing albums and touring them. So, we're both workaholics, and as we always both been kind of digging deep into turning what we love doing into work, or working with, however you want to put it, was kind of natural to, hey, this was fun. Let's turn this into something together, So MetalBreak, take a break, talk metal, was kind of the beginning of it. And the format has varied and keeps on varying, but ultimately she and I talking, and sometimes we interview people. And ideally, my favorite stuff is always when we get to touch on subjects in the grand, it's based in metal, but touch on culture or the world in a greater scheme, if we get to talk with bands from the global south, or we get to, I don't know, we just put out an episode where really, because we do movie watch-alongs with our patrons, right? And we try to pick films that are somehow relevant to the subculture one way or another. Of course, we watched Spinal Tap, for instance, or we just had the big rewatch of Some Kind of Monster the other day. And then there was Lords of Chaos, and then what was the one called on Netflix, Lords of Metal or something, which
something
is like a teenage, teenage comedy drama, and we watched that with our patrons, and it's like, and also thinking, wow, this was way better than it had any right to have.
I enjoyed that movie. That was great.
Yeah, I really like. It's like
it hit all the right chords.
By people, that it wasn't made by tourists, so to speak.
No, I understand. Yeah.
no need for gatekeeping on it. So I thought it was very endearing. So we do those kind of things. And in that context, for instance, we had this last episode that came out was us picking apart that the fact that they're making a rebooting The Crow. As
Yeah.
far as
Yeah.
the alternative 90s that, to some extent at least touches on. It was a dark comic book based violent movie at the time with a lot of bands with long hair on the soundtrack. So it fits. And especially Paki, my wife, grew up really loving that film. So
Mhm.
we had a deep discussion about that and what that means. And that's gives us a chance to talk Hollywood and Bill Skarsgård. We like the guy, but then we realize, he's kind of the reboot king because he was Pennywise as well and stuff.
True. Yeah.
But it's cool enough and dark enough that he kind of needs his Edward Scissorhands of his own or something.
At this
Not
point, it's something that
rebooted,
something that belongs to him. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So those kind of topics, mix high and low, and sometimes we talk to bands, sometimes we talk to you, and which is also one of the to kind of get to use the back door of not just that we do a podcast, but it might be one of the only times in my life where I truly go, you know who I am, to get either
get it.
friends or people we are really, really fans of to then
Mhm.
get to interview them and
I do
really
pull
have
that
that
card
perspective.
sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, and you
No,
should.
I'm the new
Because I
singer.
think it's yeah, no, but it's because it brings some kind of perspective there where because when I talk to well, now you're talking to me, but last time I was talking to you, so to speak, and when I got to talk shop about this part,
Mhm. It's
and
deeper. That's why Vox&Hops works, and it's why
yeah,
MetalBreak works. Is that we've done it. We've done hundreds of interviews, and we know
mm,
what is a good conversation. Well, I think I do. What a good conversation is, how to structure a good conversation, and how to not ask those horrible questions that we get asked so many times.
how's the tour going so far? Or can you actually in the beginning of how's the tour going is our favorite go-to, which is to me a test before an interview. If I think
Mhm.
it's okay to ask, it's like we talked briefly about the weather before we hit record, right?
Yeah,
Which is fine. It's a little,
that's a little. We're breaking the ice. We're talking. I'm
yeah,
making sure the internet
it's kind of like
connection is
what color
stable.
underwear are you wearing?
Yeah,
So that's fine. So if you sit down with someone on tour, so how's the tour going? It's okay to say before you hit record.
Once the conversation is
If that's
going,
a real question, that's a shit question because it's gonna be good, or if it's bad, I'm gonna lie about it, or
then you make
whatever.
me feel like shit. Yeah,
Because if it's bad if it's
a multitude
if
of reasons.
if ticket
Attendance,
sales
someone's
are
sick. Yeah,
disappointing, it's well, I'm still here to sell tickets. I can't talk that. And if it's bad for personal reasons, because I guess sometimes things happen. Again, we talk about
still can't talk about
well
that.
having home life going while having away from home life going and all that. So you
Mhm.
can't really, you know, you don't want to go too deep into that either. So it's a crap question. But then I saw the beginning of Some Kind of Monsters, this super cut of all when they're doing press for the album, and someone is Metallica so and so many years, 20 years, blah blah blah, and everything you done, highs and lows. How would you summarize it in one word? He can't possibly give a real answer to that.
It's shit.
There's no real answer.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's a
there's
trap.
what emotion comes when I summarize like that for you. What is that to you? So then you can, but
That's a much
in
more
one
open
word,
question, though. That's
yeah,
much more open. Then. Yeah.
exactly. But
Mhm.
those gimmick questions they never work.
They're lazy questions too. Is really what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a lot of people. If anyone's listening, just a really great trick that I've had over the years. If I'm sitting down with someone that I don't know as well that I should, because I dealt with publicists in the past with the podcast,
Mhm.
you watch other people's interviews with them, and then you
Yeah.
elaborate upon stuff that interviewer did not catch on to. There's always a way to ask a question and someone answers you, but there's a follow up that a lot of people don't take sometimes.
Yeah. That which bothers me a lot when being interviewed, like when I feel like I lay out a little trap or a
Perfect play,
point.
yeah.
I know I expect us to stay on this and you move on, but then I have to realize that I do sometimes if I look too much at my piece of paper and like, okay, and next I'm gonna, oh, that was interesting, but I was supposed to. I've done that mistake as well to not
Totally,
grab
yeah.
onto follow ups.
That especially in a, like, let's say, perfect example is when I interviewed George from Cannibal Corpse.
Hmm.
He is impossible to control and or keep on track because he will just talk about whatever he wants. And when you get hit up by a publicist, you sort of have to hit, I felt like at the time I had to hit the album because
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
purpose of the interview. But I know in reality it's a fallacy and I didn't have to hit the album. But at that point, there's like, oh, I'm missing stuff. I didn't hit stuff. And then it feels stressed as opposed to just enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, no, totally that. But then I also I try to stay on the topic of what I'm being asked and all of that. Except when if the interview isn't good enough, I feel they always in my in the realm of my huge ego, I feel can turn every bad interview good by simply answering the questions I wish they asked.
Same. I'm very hard to interview because I just take over the interview.
Yeah, no, but only but also because we end up doing a lot of press, and it's as with everything, there are a lot of bands, a lot of good bands. In my personal opinion, the list of truly great bands, I mean, at this point, is still pretty long, but percentage-wise, it's really low, which is fine.
Mhm.
And not every painting is as amazing as Van Gogh or Monet or whatever. And a lot of people interview other people, and not everyone can be who should we pull out of the hat
Sam Dunn, let's say.
sure, sure, why not? But there there are some that are truly have made a career out of that for a reason, and underground stage of things that get to talk to that go to travel to the Middle East and talk to Yasser Arafat at the time or whatever, those kind of.
But
and
yes,
and and I'm not that person either,
I'm not that
obviously,
person. No.
but a lot of people are simply not very good at it. And then,
As
or
long as they're having fun and
yeah.
they don't ask us how the tour is going in the future, then we'll forgive them. I have two quotes here that I pulled out from another interview. Funny enough, is
Hmm.
you liked a bunch of singers that you couldn't sound like when you were
Yeah,
hunting
yeah.
your voice.
Oh yeah, still do. Like, I'm a pretty deep baritone in the choir. Again, I did the
Yeah,
hallelujah,
but yet
pause,
here you're belting like
hallelujah.
Rob Halford half the time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a knack for falsetto stuff. And when I took singing lesson, because the music school led into, so in Sweden have gymnasium, is roughly like a high school. And do you does Canada basically kind of do like the US with high school, junior high and stuff? Are you similar, or are you
It
more like
depends where
your
we're at. Like my
Commonwealth
high school
friends?
was, we did 5 years just in one school, was my high school, and we finished in grade 11, from 7 to 11. And then we go off to CJ for 2 years before going to university.
Ah, okay. So
That's here in
3 years
Quebec. Yeah.
is kind of our gymnasium, I would say. Like,
Okay.
if you do go all the way before higher studies, is 12 years, right?
Okay.
First to third grade is one level, then fourth to sixth, then seventh to ninth, and then comes
Hmm.
gymnasium. And gymnasium, you get to, based on your grades, what you are able to do, you get to pick your program, which is at the time was like half of everything then you learn in school every Swedish kid would learn: your basic math, your basic history, your basic,
And the rest is more
what.
specialized.
Yeah, and the other half is what defines these different programs. We can be focused more science based or more aesthetic, for instance, the different aesthetics programs. And I went to music aesthetics, so half the classes were related to
So
music
cool.
theory, instrument choirs, and blah blah. And why was we talking? Oh yeah, and those singing lessons, I discovered I had a knack for getting a decent tone with falsetto also. But yeah, but so I have this fairly deep voice. I have started to growl, and I still call everything growl. I might be frying and doing all kinds of things,
I
but
was listening earlier today, and I would assume you're frying, would be my
yeah,
assumption
I
from what
guess
I
so.
heard today.
It's the whole. I learned that it's the, what do you call it in English? The false vocal cords, is that what's it
Hmm.
called?
Hmm.
It's, and they vibrate more irregular, and therefore we get a noise per definition rather than a tone.
A
But then
distortion.
you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
do things, yeah, exactly. And that whole thing. And beyond that, I don't really know, especially not now when I do it so much.
It's amazing. It's just
But
so natural to you, and
Well,
And
again, in the
at the
beginning,
end
it
of the
hurt like
day,
hell.
it takes time.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, as long as we can pull it off, it doesn't matter if we know what it is.
No, exactly.
It's YouTubers and all these tutorial people are what are making the importance of the labeling of everything, because it's such an unknown. You can't see what's going on in there.
But I mean, it also comes with, I mean, so I think you got a handful of years on me, but not too many. I'm not sure. How old are you?
I am 40 years old this year.
Oh yeah, so you're 3 years older than I am.
Mhm.
So we're roughly still same generation.
Totally.
Your memories of the first episodes of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are more
Totally.
crisp
I
than
literally remember. I was talking to my parents about that the other day. I remember what chair I was sitting,
yeah, exactly.
where the chair was located. Totally.
So my Turtles memories are slightly blurrier, but they are there. So we basically consumed similar things, which means also that we weren't part of the real pioneer era of extreme
No,
vocals.
totally not.
And for instance, we got to tour with Obituary many years ago.
Hardy
Oh
is
yeah,
the best. He's so nice.
but but it's also that kind of how to when you talk to guys from that generation of, so how did you even, and they were like, oh, we got high and listened to Hellhammer, and then I couldn't say so I said rah, and people thought it was cool. And what are you doing? Well, I do rah, and that, okay, never mind.
I'd say they don't know. Yeah, it's true. A lot
Yeah,
of them
and
don't know.
then I think our generation became slightly more academic, if you will, about it. And now the information is accessible in a different way because social media, because YouTube and everything, and forums and what. There's more of it than ever, so it
Mhm.
makes sense that that trip happens, and
What I
also that
find,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, what I find super interesting about right now and extreme voice vocals is we're in the generation that we're going to find out how long the human body can actually do this.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how
Mm.
many more years can we physically do what we're doing? Is there a plateau? Hypothetically, not, but we don't know. Is there a damage that we're not seeing? And we'll find out when we're 75, 80 years old after been doing this for 50 years, let's say.
But yeah, but I just, when I think about the different things I do vocally to go, it's not the thing that put the most strain on my voice at all,
Mm,
um and now I think about how great Rob Halford is still sounding on new
exactly.
albums
Yeah. And
and
can,
stuff.
George, same
For
thing.
that matter, yeah, and again, the old guard of the death metal world are still doing fine.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking, I saw, speaking of seeing things about singing on YouTube, someone put together a long, deep cut analysis about the changes of Michael Jackson's voice throughout his
Mm,
career, and just the strain, because he, well, no comparison between us in any other way in our skills as singers, but it seems like if you look through his career that he was also very often chasing that certain sound you get when you are at your peak of your ability. So his highest notes are way higher than mine ever will be, but it's just there's something to the sound you get when you push whatever boundaries you have. And he always did a lot of that, but then just that top note went lower and lower throughout his career. And then mid to late 90s, his concerts were fully backtracked. And when you hear what his voice sounded like while performing, then it's completely shot while he's touring.
mm,
And the damage he did rather than getting older. And yeah, our voices tend to get deeper over
it's
time.
true.
But that aside, in his case, the fact that he was making a lot of people who didn't really care for his well-being a lot of money while he hit puberty, which is a time where you shouldn't probably, when those months when your voice really changes, or that year or whatever, you shouldn't go, yeah, baby, and he did. And it's a whole trip you can follow there, right? Where it makes me think that death metal, especially now, again, when we learned so much collectively, is probably not the thing that breaks a voice the most.
Mm. That is true. And I interviewed Enrico from Hideous Divinity, and he is a ear, nose, and throat doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And he tends to treat pop stars, opera singers way more than any extreme vocalists,
Yeah,
just
makes
because
sense
of
to me.
the wear and tear of belting. Belting's probably the hardest thing.
Yeah.
a day-to-day belting on tour is intense.
Yeah, because now for shits and giggles, part of my practice routine as of today, for New Year's Eve, I downloaded and started subscribing so we could karaoke.
Nice.
And I had still had the subscription running. I saw this morning, oh yeah, I should cancel that. I just need for the part. And then like, you know what? So I did the loneliest karaoke party in here for like half an hour after I warmed
It's
up.
a great
After I
vocal
started to
warm-up,
work on our stuff. Yeah, and also found a way to experiment and try on a couple of different pants, so to speak.
It's true.
But with that, again, I go to speak of Michael Jackson. Yeah, first half of Man in the Mirror. I have to belt a lot to stick with it, and it sounds quote unquote good until suddenly it doesn't. That tank gets empty quicker. But I could be in here. I could be in here and sing along to my favorite death metal tunes, for hours on end, probably.
Hell yes. Keep it going. I love it, Johannes. One last question. I typically wrap up with a hangover cure, but that does not fit the bill here anymore.
Well, I have had hangovers in my life. And the best trick I ever had was to be 21 years old.
That is a magic trick.
I recommend it wholeheartedly.
Be 21 years old, people. It's true.
And once you get deeper into touring, have a crew do more of the work. But that is a double-edged sword because, again, being 2021 and going on our first couple of real tours and, of course, partying through the night and waking up feeling completely, why did I do that? Why did I do all of that? I can't sing tonight. I'm fucked. But the fact that we were forced to carry our own gear and break that sweat and then hydrate and then get back into it and then do that little sound check that felt rough, but then you're through it and then you're kind of ready for the night again. It worked every time for as long as I did it, at least. And then
still dangerous.
And I live in Finland, which is the homeland of the sauna. And subscribe to that completely. There's something, you need to hydrate.
I've heard that, yeah.
But something about, I don't know if there is science to it, except that it feels really good. But something about forcing fluids on and then getting fresh fluid in, just speeding up what the body does, I guess, helping it with that. That's something. Sweat and then compensate for that.
Hell yes.
Forcing the body to do good stuff, even when it feels wrong. And then I think the real science on that is that, you're not supposed to hit the gym or go for a long run when you're hungover. It's really bad for your heart, but it feels so good afterwards. So it's, I mean, drinking is bad for you as well. So you might as well, right?
Johannes, thank you so much for taking the time, hanging out with me, talking about life, talking about music, talking a lot about vocals. I love that. I haven't had a deep dive into vocals in a long time. I am stoked that we met like this. I'm stoked that we had that interview. I am looking forward. Last time you came through, I was on tour, so I did not come and see you. But I would love to meet you face to face one day. Massive thanks to you.
Likewise, man. And I really hope for that. I'm a bit worried now because when we talked about it last time, this thing of like, we're gonna be in Montreal. Oh, we're gonna be on the road. That's with some bands, you're just doomed to.
It's that cycle of missing each other.
Do stuff at the same time, and then there are some people you run into all the time, everywhere. And I hope at some point one of us breaks our pattern enough for us to fall into a sync where we get to meet. So, where we are, where one is off while the other is on and in that person's area, or that we just bump into festivals or whatever. Yeah.
Love to
meet you in person, man.
Massive cheers. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, man. Have a good one.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. Man, this was an awesome conversation. I am so stoked that when I opened up that Zoom meeting back in August when I was doing press for As Gomorrah Burns, that Johannes was the one interviewing me for the MetalBreak. I've put the link to that episode in the description of this podcast if you want to check out him interviewing me, the vice versa of this one. Johannes, you're awesome. I literally can't wait until we are face-to-face to have a conversation. You are insightful. You're intelligent. intelligent, and you're a damn good vocalist. Massively stoked that I had a chance to hang out with you, and if you have not checked out Johannes's band, Avatar, you should go check it out. He's just a killer vocalist and an awesome all-around human being, as you just heard. Now, if you enjoyed this Vox and Hops episode, you should sign up to the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast's mailing list. You can do that on my website, voxandhops.com. That's VOXANDHOPS.com. And when you do that, you shall receive one email a week that contains all of the details of everything that has happened in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast. You will get to see which episodes I dropped recently. You will also get to see which episodes I have coming up. You will get to hear about any projects I have in the works for the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, and you will also be updated on whatever I got going on with Cryptopsy. That's right. Cryptopsy, we just dropped our brand new album back in September of 2023, and we are doing a whole bunch of stuff. We are planning a massive 2024, starting with that European tour, the Unquestionable Blasphemy Tour with Atheists that's coming up at the end of February. It's running all across Europe until the end of March. You will also get to see which albums the Vox and Hops album review crew have reviewed recently, and you will get to see which albums Jerry Monk, Vox and Hops' metal architect, has added to the Brutal Awakenings playlist. There's always a lot of stuff going on in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, and I hate when you miss a single thing, so do me a favor and sign up to the mailing list. The Vox and Hops Metal Podcast is brought to you by Sound Talent Media and Evergreen Podcasts. I hope you have a killer rest of the week. I will be back next week with an amazing episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. That one drops on Tuesday, but until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox and Hops heads.